Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Gavkin, and today I'll be talking about how taboo words affect the brain and body. So, the article I focused on is called Swearing in the Brain by Schmaltz-Finkelstein, and it is from the Oxford Handbook of Taboo Words and Language, which is a really detailed look about the knowledge. Oh my God, fuck. Literally cannot do this. Hello, my name is Kelly Gavkin, and today I'll be talking about how taboo words affect the brain and body. So, the article I focused on is called Swearing in the Brain by Schmaltz Finkelstein, which appears in the Oxford Handbook of Taboo Words and Language. So, the article is a really detailed look at the neurological pathways, brain regions, neurotransmitters, and circuits that make swearing such a unique form of language. So I'll be connecting this article to key ideas from Benjamin Bergen's What the F and Emma Byron's Why Swearing is Good for You. And I'll also tie everything to broader course themes about language, human nature, emotion, and culture. So, why do taboo words feel different? So, we all know just from daily life that taboo words don't feel like normal words. And a swear word kind of lands differently. We can react physically, emotionally, or sometimes even socially. And Byron captures this perfectly by saying swearing is a powerful emotional tool. It lets us say what we can't say any other way. And Bergen says something similar. Profanity lights up the emotional circuits of the brain far more than ordinary language. And the research I'm presenting today looks at why this happens and what is it about swear words that grabs our system before we even think. So, now an article overview. So, this article asks the huge question, what is happening inside someone's brain when they swear or when they hear swear words? So, Finkelstein reviews data from patients with aphasia, Tourette syndrome, Alzheimer's disease, and brain injuries. So, people's whose swearing patterns reveal something about how the brain treats taboo words differently. So, Byron writes that swearing differs from the propositional language and the brain processes them differently. And that difference shows up neurologically. So, automatic swearing is often preserved even when normal speech is lost. And that tells us something pretty fundamental that the brain routes taboo words through emotional and automatic circuits, not the same circuits that are used for regular speech. And now, emotional arousal. So, when psychologists are talking about emotional arousal, they're talking about the body's alert system. So, the system that responds to threat, surprise, or a strong social meaning. And Byron writes that we respond to swearing not with logic, but with the oldest parts of the brain, which means a swear word can jolt us before we consciously register it. And Finkelstein explains that swearing often arises from a reflective and quick process, contrasting the slow and controlled process of regular language. So emotionally, the body reacts first, and then the thinking brain catches up later. And one way to test how swearing affects your body is through skin conductance, which is the test of how much electrical activity changes in sweat glands. So, in simpler terms, you're testing for how much your body sweats. And numerous studies have shown that taboo words spike skin conductance even when the listener says they're not bothered. And Bergen puts this metaphorically by saying profanity gets under the skin, literally. And another way to test how your body is affected through swearing or by swearing is by heart rate or stress response. So the article describes consistent small increases in heart rate when taboo words are heard, even outside of attention. So what's really interesting is how automatic this is. Even if a swear word flashes for a second, too quickly for conscious reading, the heart still reacts, which shows that taboo words are deeply tied to fight or flight pathways. And Finkelstein notes that the prefrontal cortex normally inhibits social outburst, but when inhibition weakens, swearing emerges quickly, like a reflex. Another way to test or see how swearing affects your body is through fMRI. So, fMRI research can show exactly which areas of your brain activate during swearing. So, through the article, Finkelstein reviews a case where a Tourette's patient with severe coprolalia, which is basically a tic that a speaking tic or for usually curse words or vulgar language. And this patient showed activation in Broca's area, the basal ganglia, insula, thalamus, and cerebellum during vocal tics. And she wrote that coprolalia was associated with activity in a large number of regions, including Broca's area and the basal ganglia, which is really important because Broca's area is usually for speech, but here it is acted by involuntary speech. So, through fMRI research, it is shown that swearing is a network event and not tied to a single region event. Another way to test how swearing affects your body is through EEG. So, EEG research, which tracks electrical activity in real time, shows that taboo words create early spikes in brain waves associated with threat detection. So, even outside of conscious awareness, taboo words produce larger early time window responses than neutral words, which supports Bergen's argument that swear words hit the emotional centers first, bypassing deliberation. So, electrically, the brain treats them swear words as important or urgent stimuli. And now I'm going to explain the limbic system so I can then go into depth about the amygdala. So, the limbic system is like the emotional core of the brain. The limbic system includes the amygdala, hippocampus, cingulate cortex, nucleus, and insula. So, Finkelstein notes that the structure in the limbic system are central to emotions, and that swearing is tied tightly to emotional arousal, aggression, and automatic responses. So, several neurological cases show that the cingulate cortex and insula activate specifically during coprolalia, which reinforces that swearing taps directly into our emotional network. So, now we're going to go more into depth about the amygdala, which is the brain's alarm center, which detects threat or emotional assailants. So, Bergen writes that the amygdala grasps the emotional weight of a swear word before the rest of the brain even know what's happened. So, this is why taboo words break through attention barriers and trigger stress responses. And Finkelstein emphasizes that anger-related swearing and outbursts in disease cases like Tourette's and frontal lobe injuries result from breakdowns in the circuits linking the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Okay, attention and cognitive interference. So, swear words grab our attention whether we want them to or not. And in tasks like the Stroop test, words slow reaction times. And Byron calls this the attention cost of profanity. So basically, the brain is shifting resources towards processing emotionally charged words, which makes sense evolutionary because emotionally meaningful information has a priority. And now the memory effects of swearing. So, this emotional arousal also strengthens memory. Studies have consistently shown that we remember taboo words better than neutral words. And Finkelstein notes that emotional pathways and automatic pathways interact strongly during swearing. And Bergen sums this memory connection perfectly by saying profanity sticks because emotion sticks. And the heightened arousal boost encoding. So now I'm going to go over an example of memory effects with swearing through educationally inappropriate mnemonics. So, to make this a little bit more concrete, researchers in cognitive psychology often study taboo-based mnemonics, which are memory tricks that include swear words. So, these mnemonics work precisely because taboo words are more memorable. And for example, students can remember lists better when one of them is paired with an inappropriate or shocking phrase. And even though they're inappropriate, they demonstrate the same principle that emotional intensity increases retention, which reinforces how close profanity is tied to attention and memory systems. And I've even personally used tricks like this to help me study for a test or something similar. And I also included like a graphic of a inappropriate mnemonic. Okay, learned emotional associations. So, one of the most important points is that none of this is innate. Babies don't come out of the womb knowing any word is offensive. Instead, they learn the emotional reactions from adults, such as being punished or laughed at when saying something inappropriate. And Byron says that children learn through the emotional charge of swearing through the reactions of adults long before they understand the words themselves. So, this means that swearing is socially conditioned, but once learned, the reaction becomes automatic and neurological. Now, cultural variability. Because swearing, because this emotional meaning of swearing is learned, it varies by culture. So, different cultures treat religious, sexual, or bodily terms with different levels of taboo. And Byron gives examples where religious profanity is the strongest form in some cultures, where in others it's sexual profanity or something different. And Finkelstein argues that swearing is always tied to social inhibition. So, cultural rules regulate social behavior. So, the brain learns those rules and responds accordingly. And the behavioral effects of swearing. So, swearing is strongly linked to aggression, but it can also replace physical aggression. So, Finkelstein quotes neurologist Hewling Straxon, who said swearing might have been an early form of social conflict management. He who first abused his fellow man instead of knocking out his brains laid the bias of civilization. So, behavioral outburst, pain relief, emotional release, and boundary testing all relate to the functional role of swearing. Okay. The neural evidence supporting swearing. So, across cases of aphasia, Tourette syndrome, Alzheimer's, and brain injuries, we see a clear pattern. Automatic swearing survives even when regular speech is lost. Swearing emerges when inhibition is impaired. The limbic system and subcortical circuits are constantly involved. And in the article, Finkelstein summarizes this by noting the ultimate player seems to be the circuit. So basically, he's saying that not any single brain region is tied to swearing. Now, the functional role of swearing. So, functionally, swearing can do several things, such as relieve pain, express emotion, signal social information, or even build group identity. And pain research has shown that shouting explosive language can increase physical pain tolerance, triggering adrenaline and endorphins. So, swearing isn't just emotional, it can be functional. Social and evolutionary functions. So Finkelstein also notes that swearing um, is linked to emotional and evolutionary communication systems. So she writes that swearing sits in between propositional language and non-linguistic vocalization. So this means that swearing might be a bridge between instinctive emotional calls and modern language. It uses annotation, emotional expression, and automatic pathways, making it evolutionary ancient in some ways. Now, to summarize this connection from the article to Bergen's book. So, Bergen argues that profanity reveals something deep about how language interacts with the brain. He explains that taboo words bypass conscious processing and activates the amygdala and limbic networks. So his main point is that profanity reveals the emotional core of language. And this does not this aligns directly with Finkelstein's evidence of brain disorders. Now, to continue our summary, Bergen also discusses how children learn taboo, how attention is disrupted by profanity, and why swear words feel so powerful. He emphasizes social learning, the same point Finkelstein makes when she describes swearing as being tied to inhibition, systems, and cultural norms. Now, in summary to Byron's book, so Byron highlighted the emotional and social functions of swearing. So, on early pages, she argues that taboo words are powerful because of what they signal socially and not because of their literal meaning. So, she writes, a swear word is a social act, a tiny explosion of emotion. And this fits perfectly with the neurological side of swearing and how it activates emotional circuits automatically. Now, to continue our summary, later in the book, she shows how swearing acts as an emotional release. a bonding tool, and even a coping mechanism for pain and stress. So her argument is that societies assign moral power to certain words, echoes Finkelstein's discussions of cultural inhibition and learned emotional responses. And so, why does any of this matter? So, the bigger lesson is that taboo words show us how language, emotion, and culture and biology are all intertwined. Swearing demonstrates that language isn't just symbolic, it's embodied. It interacts with our nervous system, our social identities, and even our emotional histories. And this all connects to major themes from our course. Language is an emotional and social tool. It connects to how societies construct meaning, how norms shape biological responses, and it goes to show the interaction between cognition, emotion, and culture. So, swearing is a perfect of all of these themes in action. So, to wrap this up, taboo words activate the body's emotional systems automatically. They affect heart rate, skin conductance, memory, and attention. These reactions are learned through culture, but processed through deep biological pathways. And swearing sits in the crossroads of biology, social meaning, and emotion. Thank you for watching my project. Here are my sources, and I hope you've learned something new. Have a nice day.